SCP-6350 Mind Body Aches. Object Class Euclid. Notice from the Records and Information Security Administration. This anomaly was previously under the jurisdiction of the American Secure Containment Initiative, ASCI, prior to its dissolution and the creation of the Foundation as we know it today. It has been deemed in the Foundation's best interest to include original documentation from the ASCI on the anomaly in order to better understand what transpired. Signed, Mariah Jones. Director, Riza. Special Containment Procedures. At present, Judson, North Carolina is entirely underwater. Although civilian incursion into SCP-6350's area of effect has shown to be uncommon, individuals are to be deterred from diving near the former location of Judson's mines. Suppression of information regarding Judson's past as a mining town is ongoing and has been largely successful thus far. Falsified information from fake travel blogs created by Foundation agents have been widely circulated online, making it difficult for researchers to find more accurate accounts. With the aid of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as local fishermen, fish population within Fontana Lake are to be monitored for signs of SCP-6350 infection. No confirmed SCP-6350 infections have occurred since the completion of the Fontana Dam and subsequent submerging of Judson on November 7, 1944. Reassignment of Containment Class to Neutralized, pending O5 approval. Description: SCP-6350 is an anomalous airborne disease affecting individuals within the coal mines located near Judson, North Carolina. Initial symptoms of SCP-6350 are difficult to distinguish from other diseases or health hazards that arise due to coal mining, including severe coughing fits, strained respiration, chronic exhaustion, and darkening of produced phlegm. Over a period of 2 to 4 weeks, footnote 1, variable depending on how long individuals have been exposed to the source of SCP-6350 and whether or not exposure has ceased. Individuals suffering from SCP-6350 will find it progressively difficult to breathe due to hardening of the lungs, inhibiting them from performing strenuous activities. This process culminates in respiratory failure and subsequent death when the lungs have become too rigid to expand. Autopsies of individuals affected by SCP-6350 have revealed formation of crystals within the chest cavity from the necrotized remains of the lungs. Analysis of the remains of the tissue has found a marked lack of carbon atoms from within cells. It is currently theorized that SCP-6350 operates by stripping carbon from molecules it comes into contact with, causing structural failure of the cell membrane. Freed carbon atoms are then arranged into the crystals found in the chests of individuals affected by SCP-6350. Original ASCI documents. Case Serial 0350 NCSWA JUD. Date: 19th of July, 1851. File: outgoing document intercepted by ASCI personnel embedded in Postal Service. Document was a letter written by Theodore Dacier, head of operations of Judson Coal Company, and overseer of the Judson Coal Mine. Intercepted document has been attached for review. Notes: coal mining accounts for 90% of Judson, North Carolina's gross domestic product. Southern Railway lines throughout North and South Carolina are reliant on Judson coal for operation. Closure of mines not deemed feasible at present. Investigation to be performed while mines remain in operation. Closing Judson coal mine would create far greater issues than this illness has at present. 17th of July, 1851. Dearest Abigail, one of the boys down in the mines was sent up after he fell into a coughing fit that stopped him dead in his tracks. He couldn't even stand upright for how hard the coughing was racking his body. I myself saw him hacking up sputum that, for the life of me, I thought could have been coal tar. Fearing an outbreak of the consumption. Footnote 2. An antiquated term for the disease caused by a mycobacterium tuberculosis infection. I had him banished from the town. I confess that it may seem a mite cruel, but I was not want for other options. We've no asylum nearby could send someone with his illness, so the only place that could take him in was the wilderness. I just hope to God that people won't be too up in arms about this. I had an awful tough decision to make, and the burden of sending him off weighs heavy on my mind. The fact that this comes just following us ending the use of canaries is troubling. They couldn't seem to handle the atmosphere down there. Something about it just wasn't right with them, so the miners couldn't use them to keep an eye on conditions. They would drop almost as soon as they got too far down in the mines. What's more, they still haven't gotten back to singing. I don't quite know how those boys in the mines taught the canaries to play dead so long, but it's frustrating to no end to know those layabouts are spending more time convincing the canaries to go along with their schemes than they are working the coal I hired them for. It's not like anything I've seen previously. I don't know how familiar you are with the practice, but the canaries don't ordinarily take to mines this poorly during a crisis. Ordinarily, they would revive after you got them into the fresh air, but that wasn't the case for these poor critters. It became terribly disheartening to the miners and endlessly frustrating on my part, so we had to ban their use in Judson. I'm not happy that if there's some foul miasma down there, we'd have no way of knowing now, but I did what I had to do. You know well I've no memory for addresses or things of that matter. I need you to send word to your eldest brother, Marvin, and see if he or someone he knows can come down and lend us his aid. He's far more familiar with medical matters than I, with all that time he spent at university. This seems something he's more equipped to handle, and having his aid would free me up to continue my work with the business side of things. Signed, Theodore Dacier. Case Serial 0350, NCSWA JUD. Date 7th of August, 1851. File: Statement from miner under employ of Judson Coal Company, Thaddeus Fletcher, taken on 5th of August, 1851. Statement was transcribed by ASCI scrivener Esther Anna, as Mr. Fletcher stated he did not know how to read or write. Notes: Statement discusses the collapse of Judson Coal Miner Company miner Scott Ogilvie during work the day prior. Due to ASCI intervention, Judson Coal Company cannot be found culpable of any wrongdoing with regards to potential injury suffered by Mr. Ogilvie under Legal Code 8 ASCI, subsection 42-1520, Washington 1789. Injury due to oddities not presently explainable by the sciences. Any employee that is found to have suffered significant harm as the result of an oddity not presently explainable by the sciences, and thus under jurisdiction of the American Secure Containment Initiative, shall not be entitled to physician fees, nor to any compensation that may have accrued under the terms of this title, unless it can be shown that the employee suffered substantial harm that would have been caused regardless of the occurrence of any such oddity, such as by work conditions that do not comply with federal safety mandates. Furthermore, employees injured in this manner are barred from seeking through the process of litigation compensation for injuries received under the terms of this title, and attempts to seek compensation for or otherwise make public the conditions of the injury or relative oddity that is under American Secure Containment Initiative jurisdiction shall result in penalty up to, but no greater than, a fine of $500 and 1 year's imprisonment. Following standard ASCI operational guidelines, Mr. Ogilvie was informed of pertinent portions of this code, though not of the existence or involvement of the ASCI. As Mr. Ogilvie does not presently have access to legal codes to research, he has been deemed unlikely to discover the ASCI legal code is not publicly available and thus is of little concern to the secrecy of ASCI operations. Affidavit. Sworn statement. Date: 6th of August, 1851. Full legal name of affiant: Thaddeus Arnold Fletcher. Age: 38. Resident of Judson, Swain County, North Carolina. Being duly sworn, I hereby swear under oath that I seen Scott crumple earlier this morning. There weren't anything to it when we first got down there today, save for him whining about how everything hurt. His eyes, he said, his chest, his back, all of it hurt. Shrugged it off at first. We all felt that way working down there. Something about Judson Mine just affects the body worse than any I've been in before. Air seems to hurt just to breathe. Every part of you aches. Your eyes strain in the lantern light to the point of burning. I given him some of my tobacco to calm his nerves, but it didn't do nothing. Scott just complaining more and more, saying how tired he was. He couldn't quite lift his pickaxe even up as high as his head, I noticed. Weren't sure if he were just being lazy or if he really had some problem. Kept coughing worse and worse until his spit started coming out, looking for all the world like the snuff I'd given him. It were filled with black junk, and just being near it stung your nose with the smell of blood, so it must have been something horrible going on inside him. Scott hacked up a few like he were a cat that just got done licking its bunghole before dropping to the ground. I threw down my pickaxe where I was standing to rush him up to get some fresh air, even with Dacier barking at me as I climbed out that I ought to leave him and keep working, saying that they'd call for a few fresh bodies from the physician's office to haul him up. Brought him right to get help, and then you folks got me and started asking me to recount all this. Affiant's signature: T. Fletcher. Case serial: 0350 NCSWA JUD. Date: 3rd of January, 1852. File: Obituary of Thaddeus Fletcher, an accompanying transcript of public funeral for Mr. Fletcher held on 26th of December, 1851. Notes: Casket remained closed for the entirety of the funeral. Theodore Dacier, who had arranged the funeral, appeared at the proceedings to give a speech about the loss of Mr. Fletcher, though the majority of the speech was how the mines remained safe for other employees and that the deaths were no cause for concern. Mr. Dacier remained at the front of the church for the entirety of the funeral and would usher away anyone who approached the casket, interrupting the priest's sermon at one point to loudly berate a child who had wandered too close. Mr. Dacier personally received all mourners following the funeral's conclusion, with the notable exception of Mr. Fletcher's wife and 4 children, who were not in attendance. ASCI scrivener Esther Anna managed to distract Mr. Dacier at this point by pretending to be the grieving sister of Thaddeus Fletcher, allowing for other ASCI personnel to investigate the casket, which was found to be empty. The body of Mr. Fletcher has yet to be located. Statements from Mr. Fletcher's wife have indicated that she had no part in preparing the funeral, nor was she even aware one was being held. She stated that she had not seen her husband's body after it was taken by Judson Coal Company physician Marvin Benner for autopsy. Mr. Fletcher alleged that she had insisted no autopsy be performed due to their religious beliefs and that her pleas were ignored. Case serial: 0350 NCSWA JUD. Date: 11th of January, 1852. File: Record of autopsy by Thaddeus Fletcher, performed on the 19th of December, 1851, by Marvin Benner. Notes: Marvin Benner was instated as resident physician of Judson under employment of Judson Coal Company on 29th of August, 1851. Investigation into Mr. Benner's background found him to have little formal training in medicine, though he spent 2 years abroad in London that he claimed were spent studying anatomy at Oxford. No records of him having formally attended exist, though some staff claim to have seen him sneaking into classes on occasion. Mr. Brenner initially stated to be ignorant of the disappearance of Thaddeus Fletcher's corpse or why such a thing would have occurred. After being informed that ASCI agents had also exhumed Scott Ogilvy's grave and found it similarly lacking a corpse, Mr. Benner became irate and insisted agents depart from his practice. Following detainment of Marvin Benner on 10th of January 1852, and after several hours of interrogation, Mr. Benner confessed to have been involved in the disappearance of the corpses of both Scott Ogilvy and Thaddeus Fletcher. The autopsy report of Thaddeus Fletcher was found within Marvin Benner's medical practice later that day, hidden away in a safe beneath the floorboards. Reports stated that Mr. Fletcher's lungs had been reduced to not greater than a bloody pulp resting atop his stomach, from which the esteemed doctor produced a number of small diamonds. It is assumed that the stomach referenced is actually the diaphragm, not the stomach itself. Marvin Benner went on to allege the involvement of Theodore Dacier in the scheme, insisting that it was Theodore's idea and he was merely an unwitting participant who had no other choice. According to ASCI agents involved in the interrogation, when asked why he kept the autopsy report at all instead of destroying it, Mr. Benner looked shocked and mumbled that he had not even considered doing so, and that he had assumed nobody would be suspicious of him at all. Theodore Dacier was subsequently brought in for questioning and, once shown the autopsy report, immediately complied with ASCI investigations. He asserted that diamonds had also been found in Scott Ogilvy's corpse and that he had sold the diamonds in a neighboring town. The profits from the sale were used to pay for the lavish residence of himself and Mr. Benner. ASCI agents are currently investigating the sale in order to track down the diamonds in question. Marvin Benner and Theodore Dacier were released from ASCI custody on the morning of 11th of January 1852. No charges are being filed against either one due to the clandestine nature of ASCI operations and knowledge of happenings under ASCI jurisdiction. Case Serial 0350 NCSWA JUD. Date 21st of September 1852. File: Report from ASCI agent Merriam Hastings on the state of Judson. Notes: Contact with the ASCI was made by Southern Railway officials on 8th of September 1852, alleging a sudden and marked decrease in coal from Judson. Agent Merriam Hastings was sent to investigate, having been made familiar with the case prior to his departure. After arriving on 11th of September 1852, Hastings sent a letter detailing growing unrest among the population, noting a palpable distrust of Judson Coal Company by residents. Agent Hastings found that since the previous report on 11th of January 1852, some 73 additional persons had passed away. Reports by Marvin Benner have indicated the manner of death for 66 of these individuals, all of which were employed within the Judson coal mine, to be identical to those of Scott Ogilvy and Thaddeus Fletcher. As per conditions of his release from ASCI custody, he had kept one diamond recovered from each of the bodies before giving the remainder to Theodore Dacier for sale and presented them to Agent Hastings in 3 mason jars. Only 59 diamonds were found to be contained within. Theodore Dacier evaded contact by Hastings for a period of 5 days before finally being cornered in his home on 17th of September 1852. When confronted, Mr. Dacier began to weep uncontrollably, expressing that he had been under an immense amount of stress as of recently. He went on to explain that the source of his dismay was rumblings among the people of Judson departing for neighboring towns. Despite the fact that they would not have any funds or even homes without Judson Coal Company employment, people had grown so fearful of the mines that they refused to go down at all. Theodore had resorted to purchasing slaves from nearby plantation owners, which was significantly cutting into his profits due to the high cost and increasing turnover rate of all persons sent into the mines. While only 66 miners had been reported deceased due to the Judson affliction, these slaves are not included in that number. If they were, the deaths would be well into the hundreds. Both Mr. Benner and Mr. Dacier begged for ASCI intervention to stem the tide of the affliction. Hastings promised he would return as soon as he found a manner of controlling it. As there is no known means of controlling the Judson affliction, ASCI efforts are to focus on finding new sources of coal with which to supply Southern Railways. The continued operation of Southern Railways train lines has been deemed far more vital to the economic success of the United States of America than that of Judson Coal Company, and Southern Railways is therefore to take priority when considering courses of action. Case Serial 0350 NCSWA JUD. Date 7th of April 1855. File: Report from ASCI Agent Merriam Hastings on the state of Judson. Notes: Judson Coal Company filed for bankruptcy on the 23rd of November 1854, stating difficulty in profiting from Judson Coal Mine as the underlying cause. As the ASCI had succeeded in establishing other mines within the southern United States in order to ensure Southern Railways maintained a steady coal supply, Southern Railways became less willing to purchase from Judson Coal Company, electing instead to turn to the new mines for their cheaper coal. Upon returning to Judson, Agent Hastings found no remaining residents, as all stores within Judson had been established by and remained under the operation of Judson Coal Company. They were closed upon the dissolution of the company. With no resources remaining in town, residents were forced to seek other methods and locations to make a living. At present, it has been determined that ASCI Case 0350 NCSWA JUD is unlikely to pose great issue, as there is no reason to go into the Judson coal mine any longer. Case Serial 0350 NCSWA JUD. Date 17th of July 1888. File: Report from ASCI Agent Thomas Lasserty on the state of Judson. Notes: Routine inspection of the Judson coal mine and surrounding area discovered no less than 12 corpses believed to be related to ASCI Case 0350 NCSWA JUD. Corpses were in varying states. The majority were nothing more than skeletal remains, accompanied by a small pile of diamonds situated beneath the ribcage, 4 of which bore the tattered remains of uniforms of Confederate soldiers. Only 3 of the deceased are believed to have succumbed to the Judson affliction within the previous year, 2 of which may have been in the mine together at the time of death. None of the deceased have been identified, but investigation has revealed rumors of unclaimed riches within Judson among residents of surrounding areas. Continued ASCI presence to deter entry is advised. Case Serial 0350 NCSWA JUD. Date 19th of October 1941. File: Final Report on Judson. Notes: The decision has been made to flood Judson, North Carolina, in order to prevent further intrusions by civilians and thereby bar exposure to the Judson mine affliction. Construction of a hydroelectric dam on the Little Tennessee River has already been proposed by other United States government agencies, both state and federal. It has been proposed that water from the Little Tennessee River could be redirected such that Judson is within the bounds of the resultant lake. Construction on Fontana Dam is to begin 1st of January 1942. Upon completion of the dam and successful submerging of Judson, ASCI Case 0350 NCSWA JUD will be officially closed. Thank you for listening to SCP-6350 Mind Body Aches by Agasuru. If you enjoyed this SCP, please like and subscribe, and follow the link in the description to the SCP Wiki and vote up the article to support the author and the SCP Wiki as a whole.